We have previously mentioned variables, and now we are going to talk a bit more about variables. And I just need my cheat sheet here. And for example, we can make my number is equal to 1. And here we then see that we run this code. My number equal to 1. This means that we are putting the number 1 into a bucket with the name my number. So for example, if we print this, print my number, we see that it's equal to 1. But if we set my number equal to 1, but then my number equal to 3, then we can print what my number contains, and it's 3. So this showcases the benefit of using variables, is that with the same reference, my number, we can have different values. For example, if this was your bank account, then the amount on your bank account, it changes quite frequently, which means that it's better to have a variable with your bank account and just put the updated number into that bucket. What we also can do is use the type of my number, which is an integer. This is because we have put an integer into this bucket, which means that Python interprets the number which we put in and decides upon which type of variable it should make. For example, if we make my decimal number is 4.2, then we can print my decimal number, and we can check the type of my decimal number. If we run this, we see that, well, my decimal number contains 4.2, and it's a float. In Python, a float is a decimal number. A decimal number, like float, takes more memory to store than an integer. Well, in our case, we don't really care much about the differences in storage. We care about what other stuff we can put into a variable, and we can put some text into a variable. Then in Python, we call this a string, and we can put pizza into the variable myString. So we can print what the contents of myString is, and we can look at the type. If we run this, we see that, well, myString contains pizza, and it's a string variable. Another kind of variable is a Boolean variable. And this is either true or false. Let's stick with false. And we can print whatever is in my Boolean, and we can check the type of the variable. So here, the value is false, and the type is Boolean. So these are some of the variables where we put one value into it. What you see here is that pizza, the string variable, or my string, which is the string variable, which contains pizza, it contains 5 different characters, P-I-Z-Z-A. So if we would like to check the contents within the string, then we can do that, for example, with my string of index 0, which is a P. And now you might say that, well, 0 is quite strange because the first letter or character in the string is a P. Well, Python follows zero-based indexing, which means that all lists and strings, they start at 0. So P is 0, I is 1, Z is 2, and so on. So for example, if we have my string of 4, then we have an A, even though it's the 5th character in the string. So it starts at 0 and ends at 4. So remember, zero-based indexing. We could make some vectors. We already made some vectors, which are columns of elements or rows of elements. And we can make a list with numbers, for example, for example, integers, and let's just make them in this order, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this actually corresponds to the index that each character or each number has in this list. So now we have made the list, and we can print the list like so. If you have a different IDE, you might need to use the print function. But what you can do is index these. So the first element is at index 0, and we know that is number 0. If we have 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, here, then the number at index 0 should be 4. Let's see if we get 4. We do. Another case is names, for example. We can put strings into a list. So here we have, for example, Eddie. We have Susan. And we have Brenda. We just make a different cell. So now we have made a list of names. And just as we did previously, we can get individual elements from this list just by supplying the index. In this case, index 1 is Susan because Eddie is at index 0, Susan at index 1, and Brenda at index 2. Even though we have 1, 2, 3 different elements in this list. And these lists, they are made by these square brackets. So these can be changed. For example, names 1 equals Tommy, and then we print names. Now the list contains Eddie, Tommy, and Brenda. A type of vector which is not possible to change is the tuple. So if we just make a variable called integers tuple, and these tuples, they are made by these parentheses. Remember that when we discussed the functions, we said that a function is recognized by a name and parentheses, but here we have this equal sign in between. So just beware of that. So here we can make a tuple of integers. For example, 11, 22, 33, 44. And just as previously, we can access each individual element by its index. So in this case, we have integers tuple is 11, 22, 33, 44. And at index 0, we have 11 because 0 is the first index here. Now we have made quite many variables. And to get an overview of which variables you have, you can go to the Jupyter window here. And here you can see all of the variables that you currently have in your workspace. So this is a beneficial way, or a quite easy way, to get an overview of what you have made and what you can work with.